I'd like to welcome everyone to Voices of Integrity for Mental Health, and we're having a guest on today, Elaine. A couple guests, Elaine and Ken, and that's why you always, if you're able to participate in the live podcast, you definitely want to do that because it's so much more fun. So in the pre-show, there was conversation, and I said to Elaine that she wasn't a nice person, and she said, "I'm not." And I'm like, no, you're not a nice person. So we'll pick it up from there. So Elaine, you're not a nice person.
Okay, go ahead and share why I'm not nice.
Yeah. So, you're Ken, he's had a lot of abuse over the years, like when his brother Dan, like who does this? Like what kind of parents allow this to happen? Like Ken, how old were you with Dan?
You mean when it started or when the conversation with my dad or what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have no idea when it started. Probably, let's see. How old were you when we moved to Ray Street?
I don't know, maybe 13 or 14.
And how old are you now?
59.
So you're 5 years. So that means I was 8, probably.
So 8 years old, and Ken, and Dan is what? He's a year, 2 years older than you.
2 years, yeah.
So Dan would have been 10, and so Dan, um, Dan's changed a lot now, though, so he doesn't do this anymore. And so, I mean, not physically. Well, not that we know of. Anyways, so he used to just beat up on Ken like all the time. Is that a fair representation, Ken?
I felt like it was every day. He at least hit me at least once a day.
Here, imagine being this 8 year old, and it probably started before then. It might have been five for, maybe since five or something. And you're just getting hit every day. Like every day, you're getting hit by your older brother who's 2 years older. So if you're 2 years older, probably you're going to be stronger, because you're older. And so you're just hitting him. And then, one day Dan just whacked him right in front of our parents. This is Ken's memory. Now, Dan, we'll share this podcast with Dan. Dan might have a different memory. I don't know. And so then what happened, Ken?
Well, I was in front of Dad, and it wasn't in front of Dad. I mean, I think it was we were in our room, and I think Dad just walked by or was looking in when it happened, and so it was almost like Dan got caught with his hand in the cookie jar.
Or
This is what I remember.
pissed against you. I got caught hitting you.
Correct. So
Right.
It was almost like oh my goodness, he got caught. And Dad said, "Why did you do that? Why did you hit Ken?" And I still remember him looking. It was like a dumbfounded look. Because he's there.
Like now,
And it was like it dawned on me. I mean, that was like revelatory to me. It's like, so it's not what I'm doing. It's just my presence brings him to hit me. It's like, what is going on?
I would think, okay, I would think that Ken would be thanking Dan, for hitting him. And because
Of course,
because
obviously.
Ken is now able to relate to, the Jewish nation. So
And
Ken,
how's that?
because there's a group of people that want to go ahead and kill Jews. Just why? Because you're a Jew. Doesn't matter. Well, is it? Did you do anything? No. Just want to kill you. Just kill you. Just kill you. Just kill you. Just kill you. Why? Because you're there. So Ken, one of the benefits that Ken sees from Dan doing this is Ken. I'm not saying Ken's going to do this, but Ken might send, a big Christmas basket to Dan and his family. And then on it, he might say, from your brother, and I just want to go ahead I just want to go ahead and thank you for hitting me all of those years
Well,
because
I'm talking on the phone.
it helped me to go ahead and have it helped me to go ahead and have empathy for the Jews. So Ken's thanking because he sees how this is beneficial. Now, if we go back, if we go back to the question, why is Elaine being mean? Why is she a mean person? And
Yes.
the reason is because she's trying to get Ken to heal. Now, some of you who have so some of you may be thinking, why is Mark saying that Elaine is being mean if she wants Ken to heal? If she's helping Ken heal. So she said last week in our podcast, she said, this is why you got to get this out to people. You can't make this stuff up. You just can't. So she gave Ken an assignment because she felt for Ken. She had empathy for Ken. She's like, as a mom of 5 kids, so she could just imagine like one of her sons being 8 years old and being picked on by one of the other sons. So she's like, wow, I have all this empathy for Ken. And she's like, I want to help him heal. So what she did is she gave him an assignment, good assignment for mental health. And you write down everything where you feel you've had trauma or you've been abused by, a sibling or whatever. Okay. And so from last week to this week, Ken forgot the assignment.
I remembered the assignment. I remember that she gave me an assignment. I just didn't remember what the assignment was.
Right. So why is that Elaine being mean? Because she's trying to help Ken heal. Why is that mean? Because when we have trauma, this is just something I just found out from my therapist, Beth, I don't know, last week or so, that you can actually use your trauma to get your way. Like little kids that jump up and down and scream and hold their breath and stuff. And so adults learn to use trauma and, their therapist and medication and a whole bunch of stuff to go ahead and get their way. I mean, I was a little surprised when Beth told me this because I'm like she's in the mental health profession. And I'm like, because I'm naive, like Linda Brakall, and Ken's probably thinking there's probably a 3% chance that Linda Brakall's real. But and so Linda Brakall, she said to me, she's my international, she's my international speaking and right, author. So she said to me, like I said to her one day, I said, Linda, like I'm on the phone and it's like Ken's thinking, is she real? Like, is she real? Do we have some type of affidavit? Because even if I give a picture and a whole bio of her, it's like, is she real? Even if Ginger Ann,
I want proof of life.
right. Like even if Ginger Ann says she coached me, he's like, did she really? Like, anyways, I'm talking on the phone to Linda Brakall, and I'm like, Linda, I just don't understand stuff. And she laughed and she's like, but you all will believe this. Ken will not believe it because when I went ahead and I took her 3-day speaking course to be a speaker, and at the end of day 1, she went ahead and she came up to me. She said, Mark, I have to be honest with you. She's like, you are the most god-awful speaker I've ever heard. And, so I was 24 years old, probably. So, me with my dumb, what rating is this one? Anyways, we got it because these are family friendly. So these are family friendly. And so you got to use language. You got to be careful what language you use. My dumb ASS, look, and I just said, Linda, I said, well, then I have no place to go but up. And she laughed. She's just like, you are a masochist, Mark. Like you just love pain. Like I haven't talked to my therapist.
Maybe Mark should have the same assignment that I had, because he Elaine, isn't that, I mean, if he's like that, doesn't that mean he has major trauma and abuse in his past too?
Oh, very likely.
But
So can
Elaine
you be
is-
a mom and give him an assignment, please? Why am I the only one who gets an assignment? I want Kenny to get an assignment too.
you're
Because
the
we want to
youngest-
work on you.
You're the youngest son, so you're a victim. You're just the youngest child is always a victim. They're masterful. They study the older ones and they just go, huh. So, anyways, so the reason Elaine is mean is she's trying to help Ken. And if she helps Ken to heal, like if she helps Ken to heal from all of his trauma, which there's obviously a lot of it, because he's the youngest. So if he helps him to heal, then his life, like he'll have nothing left of him, because in the mental health profession, and again, I'm learning this from Beth, like it's just crazy. In the mental health profession, when you have trauma, it takes up a certain part of your brain. And then you have other trauma and other trauma and other trauma. And so it takes up a certain part of your brain.
Hey,
And if
Mark.
Yes.
Tim's here with me.
Hey, Tim. Good to have you. Morning. And so if you go ahead, if you go ahead and remove all that trauma too fast, there's nothing left to work with in the brain. Like, because people, it's like Beth does a better job. I've asked her if she'd be willing to, participate in this. And her response was interesting. She said, Mark, appreciate the invite, but I think I'm going to have to pass. Like, why? She says, well, I have a few PhDs in psychology and everything else. I'm like, okay. I'm like, that would give you a lot of credibility. I think people would be like, wow, and she's like, but I can't really say anything. I can't say certain things publicly. Like I can tell you in therapy because it's confidential unless you tell everybody else. But, anyways.
Then she has deniability. I didn't say that.
Right. Like he's the patient. He has mental health issues. I diagnosed him with social autism, but because there's only 4 cases in the world and there's no money that you can be made on the mental health profession, you got to diagnose more people. Otherwise, there's no money. Now, she said, I'm not saying, Mark, this is what I heard her say. I'm not saying that the mental health profession is really all about money like business people or like the government, anything. Anyways, so when somebody has trauma, you can ask them, do you want to heal from that trauma? And they'll actually say, yes, they do want to heal from it. But they actually probably often, it seems like they don't. Just like if you ask somebody, what's your biggest problem? What's your biggest challenge? And somebody tells you their biggest challenge and you say, tell me more. And they tell you more. And then you ask them, how long have you had it? It's probably been for years. And then you say, so would you like to solve that problem? They'll say yes, but they really don't.
And that's because they're lazy or they just don't?
It's complicated. I mean, it could be lazy. It could be selfish. It could be, it's become a part of who they are. Like,
so do they know that they don't want to?
No.
They don't. So how do you help them know or figure that out?
Well, you invite them to this podcast. So then you'd say, well, will that do it? So somebody ask, will that do it?
Do it?
No, it won't. Why are you laughing?
Because I think you have an answer for everything, but that doesn't mean the answer is actually the answer. It's just an answer.
So if Beth was taking on new patients, I've talked some, not a lot to you, not a lot about you, but I've talked a little bit and she just kind of shakes her head.
Oh, that would be great if I started meeting with Beth too. That would give some validity to the reality of Beth, right?
I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
I spoke with Beth the other day.
Okay, let's get distracted.
And then Kenny is thinking right now, oh, maybe he could be so we could have 3 people that have Beth as a therapist.
Just so you all are clear, okay?
How many people even go to therapy?
Just so you guys are clear, Ken does have some mental health issues, okay?
A lot of them. A lot.
Okay. So he distracted me from my thought. I had this thought, but he does that. Anyways, we've got to wrap this podcast up. Oops, he just fell off his chair. So this happens quite a bit. Like we're not laughing, we're not making light of mental health, or maybe we are. Like if you're you're all familiar with high functioning alcoholics probably. So these are people that drink a lot, they're actually alcoholics. They probably don't know it, maybe they do, but they still have a marriage, they still hold a job. On the outside they look like they're holding it all together, but on the inside they're not. On the inside it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse. Oh, now it comes back to me. So Ken's not going to heal by participating in this. He won't. Unless
what?
Unless what?
right. See, Ralph from Australia and Ken, I think Ken, you met Ralph, right? From Australia?
I think I heard maybe on a phone call.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you were there. So therefore, because Ken met Ralph, it's like 97% sure that he's real. Like Mark's not making this up. Well, not making Ralph up, but what Mark says about Ralph probably is made up because it's probably not what Ralph said. Like, so Ralph said,
why would Mark make something up?
yeah,
For
people are
Ken's benefit?
speechless. People are speechless. They have no idea like what you're talking about. Like what? Like I don't see Mark that way at all. So Ralph said, people who pay attention. People who pay a lot of attention. So Ken's not paying to be healed. Now, if he was paying, then he'd be healed, but because he's not paying, he won't be healed. So if you're asking me, Mark, so the only way to be healed from mental health is to pay. And it's like, well, yes, if you're not paying financially. So Life Masteries Institute is a wonderful nonprofit organization, and pay them to get healed, and you'll get healed. Now, the more trauma you have, Ken obviously has a lot, the more trauma that you have, the more money you have to pay. Now, if some of you are Catholic, you might be thinking, did they borrow something from Catholicism? And it's like, no, I was raised Baptist. And so that's where we picked this up from. So anyways.
As the next step to helping Ken heal, putting a price on this phone call for him?
Well, you can't be so direct. You have to be subtle. So if you charged him something, like, Ken, do you think you have trauma?
I don't know. How do you know?
Okay. Do you want to know if you have trauma?
Sure.
How much would that be worth to you?
I don't know.
Just make up a number. It doesn't have to be real.
20 cents.
20 cents. So he's
No,
willing.
I'm sorry. 23 cents.
he's willing, okay, subconsciously to pay 23 cents to get healed. Does that make sense, Luke?
Yep.
Now, the theory is based on Baptist doctrine.
That's
and
not what I
teaching.
heard you say. I thought you said, how valuable would it be to know if you have trauma? Not
So
be
he's-
healed from the trauma.
How
If I'm
valuable
healed
would it
from the
be if you
trauma,
were
that's
healed
assuming
from the
that I
trauma?
have trauma. So 23 cents to know I have trauma. And let's go with 46 cents to be healed from it.
Okay. So Ken's a big spender, okay? This is the Dutch Boersma background. You know what? You probably aren't even a Christian if you have a therapist. Because God should heal everything. And going to church for sure, especially if you tithe. Like if you tithe, you should be fine. Anyways, this is quickly going off the rails. So the theory is that if you charge somebody something, they will pay, 23 cents. Okay. And they'll pay whatever they're charged. But theoretically, Baptist and how we were trained is that if you give with an open heart, if you give out of a heart of love and compassion and wanting other people to heal, Ken, if he went from one to another, I don't know what that number would be. I'm not saying Ken was interested in people sharing with him about being Holy Spirit led. And so I don't know if the Holy Spirit is leading with this number or not, like $23,000. Like if Ken really found out that he, was, hurt at a heart level and he could find healing, would he give Life Masteries $23,000? There's no question in my mind he would. Would he give him 230,000? Well, that would be a stretch. But 23,000 is not that big of a deal to Ken. Like it's the principle. So he would do that, I believe, especially if he had the Holy Spirit leading him to do it. But the Baptists, they're trained very adaptly. Anytime it's dealing with money, you always question if the Holy Spirit's in it. Like, I don't know if the Holy Spirit's really leading me. And he's definitely not leading you to do something with my money, for sure. So this is just how the Baptists are. So like, there's more where this came from. I know you might be thinking, how could you have more than this for mental health? So if you're not a Christian, definitely refer this to Christians, especially Baptists, especially GRBC Baptists, because they're special. They're very, very special. And one of the Osbergers, do you remember when you were at Romeoville, Ken? And did you have Osbergers?
I think they taught in the high school and I wasn't in the
Yeah.
high school.
Yeah, they did. And so it's a small world. It's very small. And so is it Mike Augsburger? I'm not sure actually. But yeah, the GRBC, they're interesting. They're an interesting group of characters here. Yeah, Mike Augsburger, and he's the pastor of Soteria Des Moines Baptist Church in West Iowa. So we'll be, sharing some things about mental health and other types of things about the GRBC and kind of their protocols and other stuff as well. So if you have any questions on anything we covered today, feel free to connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll-free 888-230-2300, outside the US 630-393-9909. Always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day and, get healthy for sure, like Ken.